Hi everyone, and welcome to the Tony Tompkins Show live feed with Nathan Ogilvie. This is being also streamed to Nathan's YouTube channel, which I will encourage all of you to view and to look at. Nathan will give you the details in relation to that in just a moment. But we're going to talk today about an issue which I think is on everyone's mind. It's a subject that's been talked about incessantly, and something which we all need, a subject we need to address. And in my opinion, it is a catastrophe, not just about the Bondi Massacre, but the way it's been interpreted and read by others and used, specifically politicized, so that people can make as much political ground as they can from a catastrophe, a trauma, the death of 15 people and the families that have had to survive that trauma. It is terrible to see. And I hope that today we can have a discussion around all of that, and I'll be doing that with Nathan in just a moment. But it's important to understand that you subscribe to my channel, and if you're watching this on Nathan's channel, also subscribe to his channel. And those that are watching it here, friends of ours on the Tony Tompkins Show, please look at Nathan's channel and subscribe there as well. So today we're going to talk about, what does this mean, the politicization of the Bondi Massacre? And I want people to have a conversation about how you've responded to it, the way you think politicians have responded to it. And I think we could particularly look at Chris Minns and the way he has responded, and whether or not there is an overreach, whether there will be results from all of this that will impact all of us, particularly in relation to our free speech. Now, we don't have the First Amendment like they do in the United States, thank God, but we do have a constitution which must be adhered to. And I'm quite sure that some of the things that Chris Minns is confronting in terms of some of the laws that he is planning to pass in New South Wales will also be challenged in the Supreme or the High Court. So it'll be interesting to see what happens in relation to that. But with conversations already has started, and I do want to thank, I've got them all up in front of me now, there's so many of them, mainly from Jenny. So Jenny, welcome, and thanks for your contribution already, the conversation, in fact, that you're having with Dee. So the question we're asking today is, how politicised do you think the Bondi Massacre has become? So let us know. And I will, at this particular point, welcome to my channel and to his, none other than Nathan Ogilvie. Hi, Nathan. Good to see you, mate.
Hi, Tony. Thanks for having me again.
Well, I don't know who's thanking who. I mean, I'm on your channel, you're on my channel, so we're doing a split thing here. Hopefully, it all works out okay. We've got a number of people online right at the moment, which is very, very pleasing. Let us know what your comments are. We'll try and, so when Nathan's talking about stuff, I will sort of monitor this, and when there's some stuff that comes up that I really think we need to talk about, we'll pop it up on the screen, and Nathan and I can have a conversation about it. Look, Nat, how about you just telling us a little bit about, the way you've responded to the Bondi Massacre? We talked a little bit about it last week anyway, because it was Tuesday last week, but certainly the aftermath of it, and how politicised do you think it has become, and whether that's good or a bad thing?
Yeah, thanks, Tony. I'm obviously, it's just a horrible tragedy. I think it's now being described as the worst terrorist attack in Australia, just based on the number of deaths and those injured. And in the video that I posted, and now from our discussion last week, I had hope that it would bring us together as a country, and that we could, at the very least, be human about it and not use it as fuel to attack each other further. Because there's so many other political issues we could be arguing and debating, like the cost of living and everything else, that I thought we could at least come together on this issue. Because if you look at the response compared to the 1996 Port Arthur massacre, when everyone rallied behind each other and John Howard, and as a nation we came together to change the gun laws. I was a young child then, so I don't fully remember it, but just how history looks upon that moment, and how I think history is going to look upon this moment, that it's sadly being used as a political weapon from certain politicians that we may get into. It's maybe not surprising, but very disheartening, and part of the bigger theme that I hope we talk about today, Tony, about I think it's a bit of both sides too. I don't want to say it's just the right, but that kind of right wing machine, that media machine that is crafting this narrative, the booing of Anthony Albanese was very sad to see. I would hope at the very least we could come behind our Prime Minister at this time, but unfortunately it seems like that's not the case.
The comparison that I made in a video I put out earlier today, which I encourage everyone to watch because, quite frankly, it's quite brilliant. Need I say anything? No, it's a video anyway, but it's nothing I do is brilliant. I can assure you that. But what I did raise was the fact that in 1996 at the Port Arthur massacre, which I do remember distinctly. It's one of those moments, around 9/11 and other moments that have happened where you sort of take note of and it sticks with you. You know where you were at that particular point in time, and anyway, during that and the Lind Cafe issue as well, at that time, and I'd be interested to know your response to this, given that you're much younger than I am and far more mature, but whether or not you, there was, the point I wanted to make was that at both of those occasions, that there was bipartisan approach, that it was about not inflaming anything, and I think you mentioned it was Tony Abbott in 1996 it would have been John Howard.
Yeah,
but
and I think Tony
it
Abbott
was
during
John
the
Howard,
yeah.
And of course it was, and how we decided, or politicians decided, that it wasn't going to be a fight over which turf they wished to own. It was actually about what they thought was the best for the community. Do you notice a difference now, though, Nathan, in any of that?
Yeah, I do, and I'm posting it in your chat. I'm going to post it in my chat. I have much less followers than you, Tony, but I'll put it in my chat as well. It's in your chat. The statement from Susan Lee. So on the day that, I believe that's from the day it happened or directly after, you can look at the last line, and it's interesting because I'll just read it out now. I offer the Prime Minister and all Commonwealth and state agencies the Coalition's full and unconditional support as both governments respond to this situation. I'm surprised that she's kept that up because you can see her actual statements in person, and it's a completely different message to that. And Albanese, I don't know if he originally credited, I'm trying to find the source of who came up with this term, the no-alition. He was told he can't use it by the Speaker in Parliament because it's unprofessional, but I can. That it seems like the path that they've taken, and this is when I say with the right-wing media, is it's just Albanese is the devil. This happened with Daniel Andrews as well. They're the devil and they can't do anything right. Now, I think reasonable people can notice the grey, as we talked about, in our last conversation last week about the black and white thinking, that no one is all good or all evil. And in a time where a great evil has happened, we want to be trying to bring as much good into the world that we can and trying to be cooperative. And if you look at that statement that Susan Lee made, in that initial written statement, she agreed to that and offered the support. And then everything since then has been just attacking, because obviously the Liberal National Coalition, the no-alition, they're not going to win on cost of living. They're not going to win on economic issues because people of my generation, millennials and Gen Z, have woken up to how they have their policies on why we're in this mess and why so many. I'm very lucky I'm a homeowner. A lot of my friends and siblings and cousins who are younger than me in the next generation are never going to probably be able to own a home. And the cost of living is number one in people's minds. And it just seems like my theory is the coalition knows they won't win on those issues. So they have to use these cultural and social issues as that way to attack. I think most Aussies can see through it, but it's really disappointing that's the approach they've taken.
Yeah, and I think they, at the moment, I think the reality is that the favourite, Albo's lost a few percentage points, but then so has Lee. And I don't think that this sort of assault that they're making on the Labor Party around all of this, and it's got to the point though, Nathan, where they're saying, we're more emotional about this than you are. That somehow they're the gatekeepers for people's emotions. And I was wondering whether too, now that I mentioned that, I thought about this earlier when I was thinking about what we're going to talk about, whether you could talk about that as a psychologist in terms of how one shares one's emotions and how one deals with their emotions differently. And that the conversation that's been around Penny Wong displayed no emotions or whatever, and that Albanese has done less, and whether being yelling, screaming, shouting, and thumping a desk is necessarily being appropriately emotional. Can you give us some feedback as a psychologist about how you
Yeah.
read all of that?
Well, we first of all know that everyone grieves and responds differently in an event like this. And I would just hope that if you take a point of view of trying to see the good in everyone, you try and always give people the benefit of the doubt. And I did that in my video, and I'm not criticizing Josh Frydenberg. Josh Frydenberg was the big one basically made a political speech at the funeral. Absolutely no doubt that he's a Jew, he's part of the Jewish community, and it's genuine his emotions. That they don't that the right wing machine, they've just decided we're going to go on the attack here and we're going to give no credit. We're going to see this as black and white. We're going to go after our political enemies around this, and then they're making an assessment on how people are responding, whether they're in tears or not. They have this template of how they need to react. You may remember this actually happened with back, Chamberlain, Lindy Chamberlain, her response to her daughter. And I wasn't really around back then, but I've seen all the footage, and she was very heavily criticized because she wasn't grieving in the way a mother would grieve, and that was a big part of why she got convicted. Public opinion was very much against her in those early stages, and we already know that she wasn't responsible, and she was grieving, and people do grieve by shutting down. So if we're judging people based on their grieving responses, this is my bigger worry with the right-wing media, and that is it's turning what I think and what I've known to be really good people into very cruel and harsh approaches, and not being able to see the good in each other. And for me, being a Christian, and that's what Christmas and this time of year is all about, is coming together with friends and family and Australians being part of a bigger collective and community. I'm really worried that if we're just going to start judging people on their emotional responses or attacking the Prime Minister, who, look, I'll be honest, he was a bit slow to act on certain things, and we'll talk about the Royal Commission and all of that in a bit, Tony, I'm sure. But to go that far is I'm disappointed by that. Again, not surprised, but disappointed.
Yeah. And I think it's kind of like a no-win situation too. Like if he was busily racing around speaking to all of these the survivors and the parents and those people that have lost somebody and attending all their funerals, he would be then criticised for not implementing changes either. Because, it appears to me on one hand, Lee and the others have been able to, I guess, all those people have been able to do the things that they can do because they're not the ones that have to implement policies and decisions. Even though I do need to add that it was interesting that Susan Lee's put together this proposal for a royal commission, which is something I guess that you and I can talk about in just a moment. But certainly I think that the government's been busy trying their best to, and this is a point too that I want to make particularly, is that I think the government has done, and Anthony Albanese to his credit. Now, I'm not going to suggest for a moment that he's perfect. It's not. I've got lots of criticisms about the Labor government, believe me. But I do think that his effort to non-politicise it, he was asked by a number of journalists, in fact, what he thought about Susan Lee's responses. And as tempting as it would have been for someone to say, well, I just think that's a load of bullshit, I don't want to speak to you about that, he dismissed it appropriately, saying that he didn't want to buy into it. So we've got one side who are buying into the politicisation, who are doing it because they believe it's the most expedient way they can increase their popularity. And then we've got Albo, who seems to be saying, no, I'm not going to do that. And I think that's a really good thing.
Yeah, I always wonder, because with Sky Media that is owned by Rupert Murdoch and is just a right-wing machine, the incentives are there to create outrage. I think I was saying to you, Tony, when you asked me how's the channel going, I can see how easily, if I made videos and thumbnails and titles that sparked outrage, I'd get so many more views than I probably do. And so then you sort of reverse engineer that have they sort of just sat down and gone, it's not actually great television to come together and cooperate and talk. They want that adversarial approach. And this happened, and you're right, because you're exactly right with Albanese being in a bind about what's he supposed to do. Because if you think about in America, people know, you might have heard of Obamacare or the Affordable Care Act, which was America's healthcare plan that Obama implemented. Who wrote that was Mitt Romney, who was a Republican. That was a right-wing economic policy because it was all about insurance companies and holding them. There's a whole bunch of things to it, but it wasn't a universal healthcare program like Medicare like we have. It wasn't a left-wing program. It was right-wing Republican. And Obama created that. It wasn't created by him. He implemented it from the right wing, and they still criticized him and still said they want to repeal it. And it's just never good enough. And I think that's the approach that our politicians on the right are taking, the no-alition. And that's why I'm going to call them the no-alition, because it's just say no. No matter what they do, don't give them an inch. Just attack, attack, attack. And then, so that's what my question would be if we go to the Royal Commission. Let's say Albanese bows to pressure and announces it. Who knows what that's going to be? My question, if people are going to ask me, would I support it or not? I need to see the details and what the scope is, because it's all about, a Royal Commission is all about the scope and what they're actually trying to answer. What's the social problem or question they're trying to get to the bottom of. I'd support it depending on what that is. But I can bet you that they're probably going to, Josh Frydenberg will then say that that's not good enough too. And that's the approach. It's like, it's just never good enough. Just attack, attack, attack. And that's it. There's no cooperation.
And it's like, I think there's so much to talk about. Every time you talk, I think, I've got to mention that. There's a few things we've got to talk about. We've got to talk about the diversity. Just on this point anyway, and I'll come back to some other things I need to talk about. But there certainly has been an effort, I think, by the government not to buy into this other stuff. And also with regard to the to an inquiry, a Royal Commission, it's Albanese listed, I think, 120 areas that the Liberal Party wanted to confront in their submission, so their terms of reference. And he said if we did that, that would take 2 years of an inquiry to discuss all of that. And to do a Royal Commission inquiry, what people don't understand, I think, is that you've got to go to court. You've got to go to. It's got to be passed legislation.
Legal, yes.
Yeah, so people have to vote on it. They have to debate it. Well, by the time Parliament sits, that's February or March. By the time that gets done, and by the time you agree to it and then settle upon somebody to run it, and then the lawyers all come together and start to figure out how much money they can make from it all. That'll be April by the time it starts.
If that, and
yeah. It's crazy shit, and people don't seem to understand those complications. I guess
the irony too is that a big argument I would hear from people about the yes/no vote with the voice to Parliament, how much is it going to cost? I don't want to pay for that. It's too vague. And now the proposal from the Liberals is, as you're right, a Royal Commission is going to cost a lot more. 120. I didn't know it was 120 terms of reference, but that's outrageous.
120 items.
Yeah, well, most of them. The one that I think was one of the best when I say best, I mean that by in terms of what they found and how important it was. Well, two of them. One was the Royal Commission into Sexual Offences in Institutions. That was so essential and needed. And the other one was the Robo-Debt Royal Commission, which the findings in that, like, there should be people arrested. ScoMo should be in jail for his role in that, because they acknowledge it was unlawful. That's a crime. And just because you're wearing a suit and you're a politician doesn't mean you get away. I don't want to go down that. I go down rabbit holes, Tony. You'll have to stop me. But I'm not against a Royal Commission as long as they can be really clear on what they're actually trying to find. If they're trying to shoehorn 3 or 4 different social issues into one, because I know a big one is about anti-Semitism, and there's probably a good argument to be made, especially because of the rise in it. And we know with ASIO and the threats, and we have to say that the radical Islamic terrorism. I'm a lefty, not afraid to say that it is a big social problem. But is a Royal Commission the best way forward? I think that I don't know if the answer's there yet. I'd like to see what they actually want to look into, because the Jewish people we need to address that. And is a Royal Commission the best way? I'm still maybe on that. I don't know.
And I think
gun control.
I think the response at the moment has been let's put somebody in control. This McDonald dude. So let's put someone in control that can come to a conclusion of some description as soon as possible. The only thing that I would be extremely concerned about would be elements of transparency. So where they were extremely where they offered criticism of the government, which the government didn't want to hear, whether they would stop that or put a ban on that. I mean, I hope that doesn't happen. I hope the government stands up and says, we'll accept whatever this guy determines or the recommendations that he makes, we will abide by them. So I'm kind of hoping that that's where this will eventually go. Now, there's a number of things that I want to talk about. I have someone on the sideline sending me stuff which, because I can't follow everything that comes up on the comment section because you and I are having a conversation. So it was suggested here that we talk about the divergence that sits within the Jewish community itself in relation to all of this. And that the Australian Jewish Association were the ones that encouraged the booing, the politicisation, in fact, of the event on Sunday. And I found that particularly horrific, and particularly the opening speaker, who's the chair, I think, of that particular association. Compare that to the Council of Australia, who opposed the division in the community over all of this, and who are, in fact, I believe, supportive of the Palestinian plight in Gaza. And I think, I don't know what how you think, I'll ask you how you think about that too, Nathan, that division that sits between the one part of the Jewish community and the other, and how we tend to conflate. Because one of these groups, particularly the Australian Jewish Association, seem to have more power and influence than do the other. And there are certainly, Anthony Lewinstein is one of them, an author, a journalist who supports the continual fight for Palestinian rights. And there are many other Jewish people out there who do the same. What do you think about that division?
Yeah, again, anyone who didn't watch last week, I'll just caveat, I'm not Jewish myself, so I don't have the personal experience of being Jewish. But again, I work closely. I work in an area in Melbourne that has a really high Jewish population, and I work with a lot of Jewish people, so I've heard directly and across. So the Jewish community is very interesting politically because they are right across the spectrum. You know, there's very orthodox, socially conservative Jewish people all the way through to very progressive. So they're not a singular group, especially politically, as you just outlined. But what I've heard from them is there is a lot of anger, and this is from progressive ones, so lefty Jews, let's say. There is anger at Albanese for his recognition of the Palestinian state, and looking into some of Albanese's history around his university years and some statements he made. I think my opinion, as I said to Tony last week, is I think if you put humanity first, you can have space in your heart for Palestinian people and Jewish people, Israeli people, all kinds of people, and be humanity first. I'm humanity first, and I know it's not as easy as just waving a wand because Trump said he'd do it and he didn't. You can't just end a war, but we should be moving towards peace and anti-war. But I do know that some of Albanese's statements from the Jewish community are seen as very divisive. And I think what's probably happened with the booing is similar to the no vote with the Indigenous voice, was that Albanese, he's not as hateable as like a Daniel Andrews. He doesn't have the hateable factor, but he doesn't have. But
I'm going to make that the quote of the week has to be quote, yeah. Nathan said that he's not as hateable as Dan Andrews. I love it.
Yeah. See, look, someone's even commented. I don't make sure I don't misread what they said. The 117, they have a voice greater than Indigenous. See, this is what I'm not attacking any commenter, but I don't compare traumas and I don't compare groups like that. All people, like as you said, to answer that question directly, the divide in the Jewish people, anti-Semitism affects them all. You know, and if we're talking about Indigenous people, this is what I don't like when you start talking about one group. People go, oh, what about another group? It's like, yes, all groups need to be feeling safe in Australia and not to be discriminated against. If you have an anti-racism approach, that applies to everybody. So you don't go, well, what about this small group and that small group? Now, if we're talking about they're having a stronger voice, well, there can be different reasons for that. But yeah, I think that's my position, Tony, is that there's whatever we do around anti-Semitism, and I think a lot of it, which I didn't really articulate properly last week, was around education, and not education in the way of sitting down with a book in a classroom, but actually meeting people and getting to know other people and what their struggles are, and integrating people, and going, as you sort of said last week, going outside your comfort zone and meeting someone new, breaking down those bubbles, I think is a huge way to doing that. And I think that approach of like booing the prime minister isn't the best way forward. And if there was a Jewish group that suggested that was kind of a coordinated thing, yeah, I'm not happy with that. I don't think that's a good thing at all for the country.
Yeah, and I think there's I don't know whether these parts of the Jewish community actually do communicate either. Whether or not one part sort of says, well, this is our position around Palestine, you don't agree to us, or if you're a Zionist, you're just going to be so rigid that you're just never going to agree about the politics of that. But I do wonder whether they could all come together, though, about anti-Semitism.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. One would expect them together.
Yeah, it is a very, again, I'm not an expert on the subtleties of all the different subgroups and things like that. But yeah, I think the anti-Semitism message resonates with all of them because they're all Jewish. And I think broader than that, the anti-racism message brings in, as you commentators are saying, Aboriginal people, African people, Muslim people that have come over here. We can talk about immigration and crime and all of that and the statistics if people want to. But if you take a human first approach, that means that everyone should have that basic respect of being able to walk down the street and feel safe, or be able to sign onto an online community and not get targeted for their race. And what I realize now is, for me, that's common sense. For probably most of, I know for you, Tony, and your audience, that's a common sense thing. But sadly, in Australia, there's a large percent of the population that it isn't common sense.
Yeah.
Sadly.
Yep. And I think there's so much to talk about. Stick with us, folks. Please, as I said before, please remember to subscribe to my channel and to Nathan's. We really do appreciate that. And it doesn't cost you anything, which is even more exciting. Fancy getting something for nothing. It's amazing. But I want to talk about things like legalizing against globalize the Intifada, and I guess legislating against certain language which is subject to different interpretations, because Intifada in the Palestinian sense means, or in the Muslim sense, I should say, means resistance. So it has been interpreted as completely destroying another nation's rights. And in its essence, though, it doesn't necessarily mean that. And there'll be people that will say global intifada, which simply means let's develop our resistance towards the things that we think are about punishing us or beating us up, or at least taking over our land and our sovereignty. So should we be looking for phrases such as that? Should we ban, and so should we ban Hamas flags? Should we ban pictures of the Ayatollah? Should we ban pictures of leaders of Hamas? Should we ban, I don't know, other things that we might... Should we ban, as they've already done, the Nazi flags, the Nazi salutes? Should we ban wearing of masks? How far? I guess my question is, how far do we go with this shit, to the point whereby are we going to have governments banning things that they themselves do not understand?
Short answer. I think I'm a truly pro free speech person, and most of those things you just said, I would say don't ban them. I think when it comes to free speech, direct incitement of violence, like me saying, I'm going to murder you, Tony, at 3:00 at your house. I don't know where you live, but let's say I do. That should be banned because that's a direct threat of violence. Statements that might be able to be interpreted as violent, I think, no. I might even be radical in that with the Nazi symbol and the swastikas. I don't think it should be necessarily banned. Definitely maybe publicly, but like, should someone be able to display a flag at their house? Because my opinion is, if people are going to use those phrases or symbols, it's just showing who they are, and banning it isn't going to take away those beliefs of those people. Like, if all
But could
that
I
stuff
just
was
ask
banned
though,
before, yeah, yeah.
is it inciting? Is it inciting hatred? Do you think?
Well, is that, I don't think this is where, if you're truly pro free speech, if someone's inciting hatred, should that be banned in a public space? It makes society, it makes things a lot more horrible. But if you're truly pro free speech, I think sadly that should um, not be banned. Now, people
So
might
when
disagree with
does
me.
so when does inciting hate? Because I don't know the answers to any of this stuff. I'm telling you, that.
Mm.
I think about it, but I haven't got to a conclusion. When does inciting hatred get to a point whereby it's also contributing to violence?
That's the difficult line, and sadly, every subgroup has crazy people or nutters that want to commit violence. Jewish people do, Muslim people do, white people definitely do. Any subgroup is going to have people that want to commit violence. Does the question of, does allowing those hate messages contribute to the violence? Well, it's very complicated, because the question is, if you ban it, first of all, it never really, especially in this online world, it doesn't go away. It just goes under the surface. And I think that's what Trump and the MAGA movement in America is a classic example. Those people believed all that stuff before Trump. They didn't all just suddenly uh, come out of the woodwork like that. But Trump, it was I look at it as sunlight is the best disinfectant. People, if in a free society, should be able to express your opinions, and then that debate can be had. Again, you shouldn't be allowed to just be promoting violence, so definitely not violent speech. But hate speech is very complicated, because it's similar to what Chris Minns is doing with the protests. If you try and suppress things like that, those movements they don't go away, and they often spring back a lot worse. And so I just caution, again, I've got no power, I'm not a politician, but if you're going to try and ban hate speech, that kind of pushing that stuff underground into like smaller communities, you're not going to ever fully get rid of it. So my idea would be, if you let that come out and then have that debate, and those people can show who they really are, because you saw it with Albanese. I mean, booing your prime minister, you could say, is sort of a form of hate speech, but it happened, and people, you can look at that and say it's disgusting, but should that be banned? I'm really hesitant on banning things, because it can be a very dark road that you go down if you do that.
Oh, I agree, because I would use the argument too that some of the commentary you get on Sky News is hate speech.
Yeah.
How would Andrew Bolt feel if he was arrested for some of the crap he says about Indigenous people? And he's already been dragged across the coals over that, and back in 2011 or whenever it was. But how would they feel if their language? So they're okay, I guess, about saying that these things should all be banned, but then there's this fine line, I think, between someone making a decision to ban the things like Trump does for the things they just don't like being said. And and my fear is that if we allow this stuff to continue, as much as I love Chris Minns, I still think that it's fraught with danger, basically, because we don't know where it's going to end.
Yeah, and if you give that power, the other side is, you give that power to a government, and where does it end? Because if you get a hateful person in charge that then declares their opponents are creating that hate speech, you don't want to set the precedent. You can just ban that stuff. And it's hard, because it means you have to live amongst sometimes disgusting people, and they're disgusting things that they say.
Yeah.
But I think the alternative is worse. And I think as well, what people probably don't realize is, I hate saying like if you allow it, but if you don't ban stuff and you just let it out, like with the MAGA movement at the moment, the whole thing's fizzling, because a big part of, if you get suppressed, you get this sort of almost this aura of like, oh, you can't say that, and it becomes this like exciting movement. And I think that's what happened, was a movement a bit of against Kamala Harris, was that the left, the Democrats are politically correct, and we can say, like, you can't say whatever you want, they're banning speech. And now Trump gets in, and a year in, the movement's kind of fizzled, because it's like, oh, we're allowed to say that stuff now. It's kind of not exciting anymore. So there's a psychological element to banning stuff that gives it this appeal. And that's, again, like, with the social media stuff and banning it from kids, it kind of just only makes it more appealing. Whereas if you kind of allow people to just say what they want, they kind of, I don't say like the movement wears out. But I think that sunlight, putting that sunlight on that hate speech rather than trying to bury it away, I think is more in line with how humans actually work.
There's also back in I don't know when, was it, a few years ago now, was it 2019, I think, where they were busily hassling over the Racial Discrimination Act, and the the Liberal Party were quite adamant that they wanted to change the language around that. They wanted to water it down, in fact. Um, and now they're on a completely different horse because now it's about feeling unsafe. So, if someone feels unsafe about, and this is where I don't know where you sit as a psychologist, but certainly as a social worker, I'm very conscious of the way people feel in certain situations, and that people should stop behaving in ways that cause people to feel unsafe because their emotional state is critical and vitally important. So, should we become more mindful of the way people are feeling and change behaviour accordingly? Is that an educational process, though, Nathan, or is that something that can be legislated, do you think?
I don't know if you can legislate it. I think psychologically, it's like called, like social learning, like Bandura, kind of leading by example. And so I don't want people to misinterpret if I say, like, I don't think we should ban hate speech. Definitely in terms of businesses and companies and areas can set their own rules. Like, I'm not saying you should just be able to say whatever you want in a workplace or anything like that. You can be against hate speech, but not be for the banning of it, like through the legislation. I think the way to do it would be, yeah, like taking an empathetic approach. A lot of the time, what it comes down to for people who have that hate speech is they feel a sense of hate. They're frustrated at something. And usually, I'm finding, because I work with some of these people in the work that I do, because I work with a lot of angry males, there's always something beneath it. Anger is a secondary emotion. There's always something underneath the anger iceberg, whether it's, sadness, maybe a kid doesn't talk to them anymore. Um, there's always some personal reason for that hate a lot of the time. Not all the time, but I'd say 95% of the time. And if we find ways to become a more empathetic, inclusive society that listens to people and listens to those frustrations, and we lead by example by not further spreading that hate speech, because I don't think that by not banning hate speech that you should just be allowed to engage in it, that we could actually create a movement where those people are just almost ostracized just because they're not pleasant to be around. The social consequences of being that hateful are probably more pertinent and probably stronger in changing the behavior than the government saying you can't say that. Because as soon as you get the restriction, first of all, it can go in a really bad direction of just banning things that shouldn't be banned, or people can just want to rebel against that, and then it becomes cool to talk like that. So I'm always in favor of, again, not banning it, but like leading by example and socially rewarding people for politeness and like what I see with my YouTube channel, those thoughtful, helpful comments that are really engaging are the ones that I try and respond to. And you just try and sort of ignore the hate speech. Not that I get much of that, but you know what I'm saying. I think the social mechanisms are stronger if you really want to make a change than the government.
Yeah. So is it? Do you think then it's more about? Well, I think it's about the education process. Then it's a bit like encouraging people not to be misogynist, to encourage people to appreciate that other people have a different point of view to your own. That in the home, some people feel unsafe, which is really the amplification of somebody else's behaviour. And I guess it's about us. Like I also worked for 30 plus years with men who were violent and abusive, and I found it astonishing that many of those men couldn't understand the impact that their behaviour was having on somebody else because it was the other person's fault. It was never their own.
Yeah.
You know, you're the bastard that hit her in the face, for Christ's sake. You know, like, but she made me because she was in my face. So, you know, it just goes on and on. You know, the sort of things they talk about, these dudes. But and you know, I think it's an uphill battle. That's what I'm saying. It's an uphill battle to try and convince people that to some extent they should change their behaviour. And the only time they do change their behaviour is if there are some form of consequences. So isolation, not getting what you want, failing to have a relationship that you want, those sorts of things are important in terms of encouraging people to change. So it is about education. I guess that's what I'm saying. So to deal with anti-Semitism and language that impacts other people, maybe we just need to be more educational.
Yeah, for sure. And educational isn't always, because I know when I say that word, some people think of, again, like sitting in a classroom or being talked down on. Education can be very much more peer to peer, or like this, like where the media diet that you have are educating you about different cultures and things like that, or being immersing yourself in it. Because again, humans, our tendency towards habit and being in our bubbles is very strong, and it feels uncomfortable to get out of your bubble. But that's really what sort of needs to happen to build that tolerance. I do think as well, when I say like the government banning, I'm not against like social media companies banning really strong hate speech and things like that. I think companies can make their own decisions about that to clean up and moderate.
Yeah, and I heard
Yeah.
someone say earlier today that even people like Andrew Tate made it unacceptable to advocate for the sorts of things that he advocated for. So even sometimes, the worst of the worst, saying the shittiest of the shittiest things, can actually cause people to turn against them. Because the general flow is, well, you're simply wrong, it's unhelpful, and the pushback. And I think that's the great thing about channels like yours and mine is that my objective anyway is to push back against all of this stuff that we're now experiencing, and to say basically there is an alternative. This is the alternative, and we need to consider how that alternative can be operationalized. I think, So. Wanted to talk about. So, I wondered, do you think your mother's watching today?
I could message her. Hi, Mum, if you are.
Because that was something we wanted to address. How do you speak to someone? My mum, you messaging
I'm doing a video on that
yeah?
tomorrow before.
Tell her to dial in.
I'm doing a video on that. I've just messaged her. No, I'm doing a video on that tomorrow about it, because really it's like most, there's the old phrase about you never speak about politics. What's it? Religion, politics, and something else. Your salary
and
or something
sport.
like that. Yeah. But I know myself too well now that I have the personality where I can't not. But I also don't want to ruin Christmas lunch, because one of the stories that I told that why I started this channel in the first place was about the yes or no vote, where it was kind of me versus 5 family members. I've worked and processed all that, and I learned from that my approach of talking down or getting frustrated and attacking back. None of that works. And it's not like I think I'm going to change anyone's mind. Like, I've got to a place where if someone's socially conservative or right wing, or they're a Pauline Hanson supporter or they're a Greens voter, my job isn't to like change anyone's mind. But what I know the core of the frustration for me is if they're closed-minded to listen to my point of view, that's very frustrating. But I do also recognize like if we always get in our bubble, like I still have my kind of left with, I try and get out of it every so often, but I still have my bubble of information. And sometimes I'll hear them say something like, "Oh, did you hear about this?" And because that's not necessarily my bubble, I don't even know if it's true. I don't even know how accurate it is. I sort of go, "Oh." One of the ones was about AI and how it's affecting jobs, and I talked to some family members about it, and they had like no idea about that. And it's kind of like, well, yeah, if you're retired, you probably aren't thinking about that. But I guess my sort of thing is like, and I see people commenting and stuff too. What are people's thoughts on talking to family at Christmas? Maybe not on Christmas Day about politics, but just in general, because it's something that I think is important. Like my brother is doesn't align with me politically, but he and I have chats a lot. And I think if you do it in a way where you know that you love the person and that respect and care for them comes before anything political, you can have a productive conversation. But also, I know for myself, if you're passionate about it and you hear someone say something that you perceive to be outrageous, it can be hard to like put a lid on it.
Yeah,
Okay,
and
someone got written out of the
I
will.
know that
See that comment,
you hear
Tony?
plenty
Someone
of
got written out of the will.
yeah, but you hear plenty of stories from people who are in MAGA who have divided families
Oh, it's horrible. Yeah, it's huge over
as a
there in
result,
the
and they
US.
can't. And conspiracy theorists, I can say this. I've got a sister who's a conspiracy theorist. She doesn't watch this show, so I know I feel quite safe. But I love her dearly, but I just can't talk to her about certain issues because it's just so entrenched. And I think, and this is part of the problem, isn't it? That if we want to educate people to change, to help them see things differently, not necessarily change their mind, they don't have to become like you or I, but sometimes it's really difficult to find that place that we can have that conversation, sort of a realistic and understanding way. It's a bit of a struggle. So one of the issues. So we've been going for 46 minutes. We're doing well. One
I
of
could
the
go all day.
things. So where do we go from
Yeah,
here then? Uh, let's talk about that for a bit, and then
yeah,
I'll see if I can focus on some of the questions and some of the
yeah,
statements that we've had a lot of people come
yeah.
on
You can bring.
board.
Yeah,
Um,
great.
so at this point, we've had
Yeah,
143 people come on board, so it's looking pretty good. So and keep coming, and please subscribe to the channel, mine and Nathan's, and ring the bell for further notifications.
yeah.
So where to from here then, in
I
relation
think.
to all this? What
Yeah,
direction are we heading? Is it a good direction? Is it a bad direction? Or are there simply lessons to be learned that we may struggle to learn in this moment?
yeah. I think my view is that when you have a tragedy like that, it does sort of reveal what's going on. It sort of heightens everything. And I think people like us, myself and you, Tony, and so many, it's not just a right or left wing thing. It's more if people are willing to go outside and hear other people's point of view and compromise rather than obstruct is my sort of approach. Because I at the moment am in support of the independence because I'm one of those people that I think it's like 90% of Australians now believe government is corrupt and politicians are out for themselves. So even though
Yeah,
Labor are definitely better, there's no doubt that Labor are much better. They're not perfect and they're not even good on some issues. So I
yeah,
think it's like important for people like us to just keep our voices out there to know that, and if people feel this way, to not feel so lost. Because that's what I kind of felt after that conversation with my family, that I was the only one who believed that way. And I knew it wasn't true because it ended up being, 35% of Australia voted yes. So I knew I wasn't alone. But the way society's set up now is we're sort of set up to feel alone. The corporations want it that way, so we don't interact with each other and we just keep buying stuff. It's we have to fight against that wave of that division because I don't think it's, and I'm not like this kumbaya thinking we're all going to love each other or anything like that, but more just that coexistence. I think that's the thing,
yeah.
like what the Bondi attack showed, that was not what a society that we want to live in. And the only part that gives me hope is I know that 99.999% of Australians agree with that. I think it's just how we go about that unity. Attacking the other side constantly and not being willing to work with them at all, I think is the wrong approach. And I think the coalition will get punished in the polls next time if that's the way they go. So again, yeah, we just have to keep connecting. We have to keep talking to our family, unfortunately, talking to our friends, and just trying to find a way to move forward. Because I do think that it's not that hard to unrig the system. It's rigged for a reason to make the billionaires even more wealthy. If we unite as a people, it's not that hard to unrig it. We just have to have the will to do it and
Yeah, and
the connection.
I think one of the things that's critical for me and for my channel, maybe the same for you, is to um, offer. I was going to say alternate views, but that sounds like Conway's version of events with regard to MAGA.
Yeah,
So I think that the best thing to do is to offer different ideas, I guess, and to push
yeah,
back against some of the things that I object to. I have one particular bloke who who dislikes me intensely because I do refer to Andrew Bolt as human excrement, and for some reason that's hate speech. I just think it's dark humour. So it's how we it's how we interpret it that is important. But we need to have lively discussions, I guess, around all of this stuff, so that other people, and I think live feeds are important because this is an opportunity for people to join in and to continue the conversation. So, how do you think? Like your mother, how
She's
how
watching. No, I don't actually.
how will she? Can we? Are we hopeful that
Yes,
she'll perhaps see
I
things a
want to
little
say I don't know if
differently?
she hasn't responded to me. I don't know if she's watching or will watch, but I love her very much. She's an amazing
Well,
mother.
can you tell her? I don't know her, but I love her as well.
Yeah, her name's. I think you got a comment to Jenny. My mother's name's Jenny too, and she's an amazing woman.
It's not this
And
Jenny
nothing,
here, is it?
No, I hope not. No, it's not. No, how do we do it? I think, it's just that I'm always in terms of, and I've said this, with like the Israel Gaza about you can criticize the governments and those in power rather than the people. I think as well, like with Andrew Bolt, he is someone that has high status, high power in society, and he's using that power for evil. And I think he's a case of he knows that he is. I think a lot of people, everyday people, are sort of misled. They don't, because their lives are so busy. Like my mum was a single mum and she was raising my brother and I in really difficult circumstances. It didn't really have time or the luxury to pay attention to politics. So, and people will always have those issues that are important to them. Like, if you're a homeowner and you're in a high tax bracket, you have different priorities to a uni student. So, because I know when I say like everyday Aussies, people are like, well, what even is that? Because everyone has different priorities. I think the first step is just the listening and being open-minded enough to recognize that someone might have a different point of view than you. And whether that's a racial thing, a cultural thing, an economic thing, if you go in with that approach, like, okay, this person sees the world differently, what do they stand for? Because I do think a lot of the right wing, Tony, I've been thinking about like the right wing stuff since we last spoke last week, and I know Kevin Rudd tried to get a Murdoch Royal Commission, but I almost think we need to study it as a public health issue, the right wing propaganda, because it turns really good people that I know, and it's not just family, it's a lot of people that I know, really nice people that are empathetic, into very cruel and harsh. And I wouldn't say harsh people, I wouldn't label them like that, but to have really cruel and harsh opinions and to be very closed-minded. And I think it, from a psychological point of view, needs to be investigated, that machine, because aside from whether it leads to political outcomes, which it didn't in the last election, and that's what gives me hope, is I think most everyday Aussies know that right-wingers don't actually deliver for them. It's all about Gina Reinhardt and her tax breaks as a multi-billionaire. But again, going back to people and what can we do, I think it's just talking to each other and being at least just open to the idea that we might not be right about everything. The information we might have might be incorrect, or we might have made the wrong conclusion, and to hear from people that have different perspectives and be willing to change our mind. I think if you have that mindset, like in therapy, if you don't have that and you attend therapy, there's no point going to therapy because you're just not going to change. And I think it's the same with political discussions, or just even as a human, just listening to someone else and trying to see from their point of view doesn't mean you have to agree, but as long as you get heard. And that's what I've said to anyone I have political debates with, is like, I don't get frustrated if you listen to me and you're still a right winger and you still watch Andrew Bolt. I don't care. But as long as you listen to me and heard my point of view, if you're not willing to do that, that's when I have an issue. But if we could all be a little bit more empathetic and listening, I think society would advance in a much better direction.
And I think you nailed it there. I think I agree with you 100%. But I'm not going to waste my time with people who can't be flexible enough in their thinking, though, to see at least the possibility of an alternative. I just wanted to play.
I call them the too far gones. Some people are too far gone.
too far gone.
The TFGs.
So we're talking about Andrew Bolt. JG said that's insulting human excrement. I kind of like that idea. Yes, so we've got. So let's focus a little bit about. I'll try and find something that's kind of controversial here.
Yeah, someone mentioned
Bolt is a goose. We know that. One of the rare times I actually agreed with. I don't know what PWR is talking about there. Well, here's one. So delete. So put this one up. Delete, respect, manners, empathy, sympathy. Lost human traits, unfortunately. I think they appear to be, don't they? I guess, but I don't
Yeah.
think that. I don't think. I actually don't agree entirely with that statement.
Well,
I'm a little bit more. I
yeah.
guess I'm a little bit more hopeful than just that.
Yeah, I look at it as society versus individuals, and there's definitely empathetic, caring, respectful people in society still. Maybe there's less than in the past. But yeah, that's that is my question with this the whole right wing machine that are very cruel and as you said last week, bullying. Rita, the lefties losing it. Like that's not good faith. It's very bad faith, and then how that can warp the minds of the viewers into that kind of cruelty mindset. Um, that needs to be studied, I think. Yeah, so
Exactly. I'm
I have
just
more hope than that commenter, but yeah, I can see if you have people in your life or there's that seems to be what you see on social media. It's probably good to take a break from that social media and connect with people if you have anyone empathetic in your life. Sometimes
yeah.
getting off the digital world is helpful if you have that mindset. As if you're thinking of humanity as a whole as that, yeah. I don't think it's everyone's like that yet.
Yeah, someone's PWR says, "I so hope Albo and Co don't overreact any more than they already have." And it's, I mean, that's something I guess we should talk about. I'll just put PWR's comments up here. Uh, that was the one I had previously. Just get rid of that.
Well, that is a good point. Like if you're going to be a government like that, and another government will just retract it, that is
Yeah,
part of the problem.
yeah.
That's what compromise should be. The next party won't get in and change it.
So, and that's one of the things I did want to talk about was that just reminded me there, whoever put that up, is that um, is there an overreaction? Is there I guess that's the point. Is there an overreaction to what happened? Are people taking enough time to consider the ramifications, I guess, of changing laws and the impact on society? Without doing so, is changing the law, though, a quick and easy or a perceived easy solution to a problem that perhaps is far more complicated than just that?
Yeah, I think it depends on what the law is, like what we're actually going to change
Well,
and
there's
why.
guns,
Yeah. Well,
do
guns
away
in
with guns.
particular.
Fine, don't have an issue with that. Can understand why anybody in Australia in a
Yeah,
suburb would hold a gun. End of story. Done, dusted, out of there. And 80% of Australians agree with that.
for sure. Yeah, and that's what I mean. Those common sense things that most people agree with, we should be able to change those. And that's what I would hope is just with any right wingers who happen to stumble on this video or with the right wing politicians is public safety. Everyone agrees with that. No one wants the public to be unsafe, except those really small minority that commit those crimes. That's what I hope we can come to together as a society and support Albanese to put in place those things that will actually keep the public safe. And yeah, that's in it. You can do the political point scoring alongside that. I think, like you can still run against Labor for other things they do, but just when it comes to that public safety, I really hope we come together with those common sense policies. And we've done it as a country in the '90s, with John Howard. A lot of the, I was for, but I don't know about you, Tony. I'm sure you probably supported even though I'm sure you didn't support Howard on a lot of other things. It's possible to, if you don't see someone as all good or all bad, you can go, some of that stuff around guns that Howard did really kept us safe as a country. And I would hope that anyone that's critical of Albanese can do that, basically.
Yeah, yeah. So we're almost at our finishing time. So
Yeah.
I'll just put it back to you. To any final words, Nathan, on
Yeah.
anything that we've discussed, and perhaps in conclusion, if you could just plug your YouTube channel,
Yeah.
get your subscriptions up.
I'll just say my mum said she's watching, so hi, mum. I love you a lot.
Well, look, hold on.
Have you got a special? This is my
Hi.
new friend Tony.
God,
He's
you've got a
teaching.
fantastic son, Mum.
Oh, thank
Look,
you.
I congratulate you on your ability to raise such a wonderful child, and I think you should be commended for being a great mother. In fact, shall I carry on? Do you think
Now, if you
this
want to
is?
praise me, you can talk all day, Tony. You can keep going.
Oh, right.
I'll sit here and listen to
praising. Well, it is praising you too, isn't it?
I'm praising her. Yeah, praising her.
Your mother's done a fabulous job and should be very proud of you. End of story.
And when I say that about politics and family, what I mean is that and this is what hasn't happened for me. And some of the comments I was reading, even though some people were kind of saying them in a humorous way, it is heartbreaking if families can't communicate or talk because of politics. I don't think politics is that, even though it's a huge part of our lives, it shouldn't be that important that we don't communicate. So that's kind of the message. I don't want to be misinterpreted by anyone that I'm like being critical of anyone's family or anything. I think you should either get to a point where you go, yeah, we just can't talk about it and we're just not going to, or if we are, we know that our family comes first and we love our family, and politics will always be a side issue to that. Because I can't see a political issue where I'd be so upset that I couldn't talk to a family member again over it. And so I see that a trend. I know that's huge, as you said, in America with Trump, huge in America, and I hope we don't carry that over to Australia. That's one of the things I hope we do better as a country, that we can have those sort of more coming together discussions than tearing each other apart. And my channel is called The Rightist Leftist, with Nathan Ogilvy.
I should get a third. I should do a 1/3 with that on it. We'll do that next time so that people.
Yeah, and people say that it's a play on words. Like I'm saying, I'm the most correct leftist, but also I don't want to dismiss right wingers and their ideas, because we have to live amongst each other, and that's all my videos. It's like looking at both sides. I don't just attack right wingers, and I don't just advocate for left wing things. It's an analysis of what's going on and how we can make society better.
So we want Nathan's site to. Next year, goal is to get monetized so that you can earn a little bit of pocket money. Because that's all you earn from friggin' YouTube, unless you've got 1 million subscribers, whatever.
Yeah, I'm not going to do ads or anything, so I'll
No. I just do YouTube. I don't even do TikTok and other shit. But Nathan, thanks, mate. Stay online. We'll get back to you when I'm finished here.
Tony.
Thanks, buddy. Really do appreciate Nathan's contribution. He's one very special guy, and he's got a very special mother who's watching at the moment. So we appreciate that. So just remember to comment. Continue the comments down below. Everybody's had a fabulous conversation. We had lots of people that have come online today, and we really appreciate that. Now, I don't know what people do come the holidays. I just say to people, look, just whatever you're doing, enjoy it. If you're being with your family, enjoy it. I know that some people on these days don't. And I just need to say, I worked a lot with families who had their children removed. And Christmas is not a happy occasion for them, because they don't get to see their children on Christmas Day. And it's sad, but it's a reality. And there's thousands and thousands of those parents in our community around Australia today. And I just want to let you people know that I am remembering you on this day. And I hope that whatever the day might mean for you, that you do make it the best that you can, and certainly let your kids know, as I'm sure you do, that you love them. So however the day is for you, hope you enjoy it for whatever it may mean. And so I want to thank you for being with me, and just remember to subscribe to my channel and to Nathan's, and we'll let you know. I'm assuming I'm doing one next Tuesday. I certainly won't be doing a live feed on Thursday. But on Tuesday, whether it's Nathan or not, I'll check that out with him. But I'll see you and work with you then. In the meantime, take care.